ready to go into a sermon. Years ago, a friend and I were chatting about our families of origin. This was before we each had children. So we were talking about how our moms and dads and siblings related to each other and what we like to do, that we like to go out to eat, that we like to watch TV together. My friend told me this wonderful story that well, not really story, they loved in a mean way, and she was a lawyer, I think she probably got this from her family. They like to debate anything and everything. And sometimes their love of watching television and their love of debate collided. So she told the stories about how the TV was kind of always on in her house. And so that meant when a debate arose between her mom and dad, or she and her mom, something small, like who to take out the garbage, as that debate went on, the TV still was on, and whoever was watching TV would turn up the TV as the debate got more intense and louder. So my friend said it was ridiculous. As the TV volume went up, so did people's debate. Boys, right? I was a little loud. But yeah, so the volume went up on the debate, the volume went up on the TV, and she said at one point we would just look at each other and say, well, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm just going to go take out the garbage, or something like that. Although she said the TV never went off. That's so fun. So this concept of ratcheting up the volume with the competition, right? And that's that
recording in progress.
Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. That's what we see in our story today. Did you hear it? There's volume. There's volume in this story we have today. Bartimaeus is a blind man begging on the side of the road near Jerusalem, and he hears that Jesus of Nazareth is in town, that he's coming. And he shouts out a name that this is the first time anybody calls Jesus this in the book of Mark, Son of David. And it's a name that shows Bartimaeus' trust in Jesus as Messiah. A name showing that Bartimaeus knew who Jesus was, the promised one coming from David's line. He calls out, and did you catch this? His call is met with a reprimand. Mark writes, many sternly ordered him to be quiet. Now think about that for a minute. A reprimand, another way to put this is he's shushed. He's told to be quiet, right? Hold his tongue. I'm sure we've all been shushed before. We've all been reprimanded. That happens when you're a kid, right? When you're real little, your mom will say things like, shh, be quiet. When you're in class, sometimes if you're having even older kids, if you're having a conversation, the teacher might say, hey, pay attention, things like that. It's not pleasant to be reprimanded in that way. Even if it's justified, you feel like, oh, I'm talking. It's even more unpleasant, though, when it's unjustified, right? It hits you even more deeply when you feel like you shouldn't be shushed. I have an example of this. A few years ago, friends and I went to go see a band from when we were in high school. For those of you people close to Gen X age, it was Spin Doctors. I don't know if you know Spin Doctors. But if you know them, you know they're a band that jumps, they're jumping around. They have energy. I mean, they're older now, but when they were back in the day, pretty vivacious, pretty energetic performers. So some friends and I went to see them several years ago at a local venue, and it was exciting. He was jumping around, and he was encouraging the crowd to sing along. So that's what my friends and I were doing. Well, someone behind us, I felt this little on my shoulder, and I turned around, and she asked us to be quiet and to sit down, because there were seats. And I said, excuse me? And she said, can you please be quiet and sit down? And it took me a minute to register. It's like, this is like a kind of a rock, an alternative rock show. But that wasn't what she was in the mood for. So we did sit down. But wow, that felt unjustified. I shouldn't be shushed. Why am I being reprimanded in this place? He's jumping up and down. So I thought about that. It's just not pleasant to be reprimanded when you feel you should be, and you really shouldn't be, frankly. You can tell I'm so upset about it. Thank you. I'm working through it. So I thought about this story in relationship to Bartimaeus. There was no reason that he should be kept quiet. None at all. There was no reason for it. The people who sternly reprimanded him, telling him to be quiet, they misunderstood that this exactly, Bartimaeus' call, was exactly what he should be doing in that time and place. Jesus had come for that purpose, to be called on. That's why Jesus came. It's a hard truth to learn about Jesus. We've been walked together as we've gone through the Mark Gospel this year in recent weeks. We've heard how disciples, time and time again, they don't get it. Remember when the parents are bringing their little ones to Jesus, and the disciples say, no, don't let them come, right? And then last week, we heard James and John, the brothers, the sons of Zebedee, say, can we sit at your right and left hand? It's a hard truth to know that Jesus doesn't come for that kind of glory. He comes for the least of these, as Jesus says elsewhere in Mark. So, like it was hard for the disciples, it was hard for the crowd there in Jericho to understand that Bartimaeus' cry for Jesus' mercy was exactly the kind of shout Jesus came to answer. Well, unlike me, I sat down in that concert. Bartimaeus didn't sit down, did he? Bartimaeus cried out even more loudly, Mark says, even more loudly, because he knew he was confident in the kind of Savior was. And I love this part of this gospel. Did you hear what Jesus does? He stood still. It gives you such a beautiful mental image of our Savior on the way, on the road, in full stride. And he stops in his tracks at Bartimaeus' cry. And as he stops in his tracks for every cry that you lift up to him. So Jesus says, call him on over. And then someone, we don't know if it's the same people, but people gathered there. Maybe it's the same people who just sternly ordered him not to call out. But people say, oh, hear Jesus. Yeah, Jesus wants him to come. And so they tell Bartimaeus, take heart and come on over here. So after so many instances of people not getting what Jesus' Messiahship meant, that his Messiahship meant sacrifice, not glory, finally Bartimaeus is our example of what discipleship is. And he shows what he gets. He shows that he gets this with a shout asking for Jesus' mercy. A cry for Jesus' mercy that he won't let go of, that he won't step back from as people want him to. Mark wants us to know that this is faithful discipleship. This is what following Jesus is, a cry out loudly for Jesus. A faith that relies on the mercy extended to us. A faith that knows, like Bartimaeus, we can't do this alone, Jesus. A faith that persists. And I don't know if you caught this. If you have a couple of minutes, just take a look at this story and in just the verses before it, compare it to James and John and their interaction with Jesus. Jesus asks of Bartimaeus the same question he asks of James and John. To both of them, he says, what is it you want me to do for you? What is it you want me to do for you? Bartimaeus, knowing and relying on Christ's mercy, says, my teacher, let me see again. He brings his intercession to Christ. So where the brothers, where James and John sought glory, this Bartimaeus seeks mercy, knowing that Christ has come for him. So that's the story. True discipleship is persistent faith in God's mercy and his love for you and for me. And Bartimaeus' discipleship, just as it was for the first hearers of Mark's gospel, is an example for us too. Like Bartimaeus, we need to have our voices of faith, to rely on God's mercy, to rely on the lengths God went to save us in our world. the lengths God would go to usher in God's kingdom, where we're all beloved children of God. So Bartimaeus yelled out. He let his faith be known. And that's a call to us to let our voices of faith be known in the world around us. To be vocal to those around us about our faith in Jesus. This can be hard. This is hard. This can be hard in our world to be vocal about our faith. That's a call, though, ours. And we each can do it in our own ways. And we need to do it in our own ways. We can't give voices to our faith in all the same way, because we all are disciples in particular ways. But our reliance, our faith, can rise above the din of the world. The world is a cynical place, it can be. It's a skeptical place. It's a place of hardship. But making our voices of faith present and rise above that kind of din is what we're called to do. It can be as simple as telling a friend or coworker that you're keeping them in prayer. Do that. Do it. Keep them in prayer. And then follow up with them. Right? I've been praying for you. How's that? How's the friend of yours who's sick? How's that hard time that you're going through? Or maybe in a conversation with a friend who's having a hard time, you share with them how God sustained you in that time. Or you share a psalm. You write a note with a favorite verse that has seen you through a dark time in your life. Let's not be afraid of bearing witness, of giving voice to the work of the Spirit in our lives. So our voices of faith can be like Bartimaeus in that we bear witness to our own reliance on Christ to other people. But our voices of faith can be like Bartimaeus too, in that we're persistent in our own lives of seeking God's mercy and help. Bartimaeus literally brought his request to Jesus. And it seems so simplistic to say, bring your request to Jesus in prayer. Okay, I said it. Bring your request to Jesus in prayer. That's a simple thing to say. Why is it so hard? It's hard. Why is it so hard? Why is it the last thing we do so often? Whether it's a burden of guilt we hold after a way we acted, or a thing we've done, or we're feeling confusion regarding a way forward in a time in our life. We feel indecisive about something, or we carry a great grief related to an illness or loss. Why don't we go first in prayer to Jesus? It's part of our human condition. But all of them, let's bring them to Christ. Get down on your knees. Get down on your knees or bend your head deep in prayer, deep and low. If you need to, let the tears flow and bring them to Christ. Faith and prayer, they go together. Prayer is bringing to God our deepest fears and sadness and joys and thanks. So I've run across before, I ran across it again, a quote that is attributed to Mahalia Jackson, that amazing queen of gospel in the 20th century. She was born in New Orleans, I think. Yeah, born in New Orleans, but then spent her career in Chicago. And I couldn't find when she said this or where she said it, but this is what she's quoted as saying. Miss Jackson said, "Faith and prayer are vitamins of the soul. Man cannot live in health without them." It's so well said and clearly said, isn't it, by Miss Jackson? Our reliance, our trust in Jesus goes hand in hand with prayer. That's the life of discipleship. So let Bartimaeus' prayer, his cry to Jesus, be ours. Try it out in prayer later on today or this week. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. That's a prayer. Let this ring over the uncertainties, the disappointments, the deep grief and confusion that the world can bring us. Let this be a witness to others. When you pray that prayer, that gets in your bones. It becomes part of your blood, and you just can't help but be a witness to other people. So, let that be our prayer, our cry, so that others may hear it too. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on us. Amen.